Staying Alive UK. Share your story.
Hello and welcome to the Share Your Story podcast series, a business biography, their story so far. I'm Michael D. Groot and I'm your host. My purpose through this podcast series is to inspire you to take the next step towards your new business venture or indeed develop your existing business even further. I only interview business owners who employ less than 9 employees, and mostly they will be on their own. So let's get straight to it. And today I'm delighted to have on the podcast Brian Wallace. And before you hear from Brian, let me first of all, as always, tell you a little bit about him. Brian Wallace is the President of NowSourcing, one of the world's top infographic design agencies based in Louisville, Kentucky, and Cincinnati, Ohio. This is the USA, people. So Brian also runs a local event called Think Big to make the Louisville-Cincinnati corridor a more competitive region and has been named a 2017 Google Small Business Advisor. Founded in 2005, NowSourcing has strong roots in the human and technical nuances of the web. He and his team provide research, design, and promotion of infographics, as well as what's next in the world of infographics. Video infographics, kinetic typography, and interactive infographics. Brian is a frequent speaker, lecturer, and mentor coming from a technology management background and understands the pressure points of society at large to keep people clicking and coming back for more. Welcome to the Share Your Story podcast, Brian. How are you today?
Doing fantastic, Michael. Thanks so much for the great intro. Sounds like a lot that I have to live up to.
There is a huge amount there, and it sounds really fascinating and interesting. And I'm really looking forward to hear your story and how you got into that, because it's very close to my passion as well in the world. And so I love infographics. That's the one thing when they started appearing, I just fell in love with. And so, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. So what happens normally is that I'm going to ask you a few questions and just to tease out your story. And the first one is always about your personal life. So if you could share with the listeners, tell us where you were born, where did you move and where do you now live? A little bit about your education, and then what happened after that. You can share stuff about your family if you wish to, but you don't have to. Maybe, do you have any hobbies and interests apart from your work? And we'll take it from there. So off you go.
Absolutely. So I'm married with 6 kids, so that pretty much covers all the hobbies department.
Wow. Yes. That's unusual, Brian.
It is, indeed. And I like to tell people, now I know we have an international audience here. I usually tell people that I was born in a faraway land called Brooklyn, which is funnier if you're only in the United States.
Yes.
But you'll notice I don't sound like someone if you've ever spoken to or interviewed anybody from Brooklyn. So I grew up in the suburbs of New York City, where at least in America, I have what most people would say is more of a non-regional dialect. You probably might not consider it non-regional because of where you are. But,
yes, that's right.
Given where I was born and raised, it's much more of it's strange because I live in Cincinnati now, and we'll get to how I got there in a minute. It's strange to me that a lot of people that live here in the Midwest, or what a lot of people in the United States call flyover country, which is meant to be disparaging, but that's okay. They're just missing some of the good things that are happening in this great nation. So, yeah, a lot of people out here actually have a pretty similar accent to me, which I think is pretty wild because it's halfway across the country. In any case, so I grew up, as I said, in the suburbs of New York City.
Yeah.
Some people, again, everything is relative. So some people would say that's upstate New York. Some people would say that is the suburbs. Everybody likes to argue about everything. Just talk to anybody about, Apple versus Android or anything like that, and everybody's ready to start a holy war. So
yes.
you can't make anybody happy when you try to say things the way that you're trying to explain it. In any case, so I grew up over there. I went to school in upstate New York, which is where I actually met my wife. And we lived in New York for the earlier part of our marriage. And we decided, especially after 9/11, where we actually lived pretty close to New York City, that we were ready for something different. There were a lot of people that I kind of found were a lot of people's life changed that day. Luckily, we were all alive from it.
Yeah.
So nothing of that consequence hit us. But needless to say, in August of 2001, we had a chance to see Louisville, Kentucky for the first time. We had to come out there for a health reason, and we loved it. And then 2 weeks later was 9/11. So we said, look, here's a nice place where some of these things aren't happening. So maybe we can check that out. So my parents wanted me to be a doctor. I ended up not doing that, as you would take from my bio there. So I did a few different things. I started with what they now call a neuroscience degree, but I later got into political science and pre-law, almost went to law school, got a double major in political science and what they called philosophy, politics, and law. I thought about being an internet lawyer, but I really didn't want to go to school for years and years after that. I was taking a lot of computer science, but they didn't have a Bachelor of Arts in computer science. So I decided to graduate. And given that I was already political and technical in nature, my first job out of college was actually being like a technology director / liaison for local government here in States when I was in New York, which didn't really fit with me and what I wanted to do. Plus, I graduated in 1999, so I was just drooling over all of the technology that was going on in the world. And I said, wow, this .com movement is amazing. I really want to get into this. So my next job along the way was being a VP of technology for .com in the Metro New York area. And that was a lot of fun. During that time, I also got married, and I was also getting my MBA in information technology. So there's a lot going on during those times. That also 9/11 was in the middle of all of that. Oh, wow. So there was just, man, that time was a blur. There were actually professors that would let me teach the class because they were more interested in what I was doing in the .com world than wanting to teach, which I thought was a little weird. But hey, that sounds better than taking a midterm, right? Yeah. So I did all those kinds of things for a while. And as you know, the first .com boom went bust. Yeah. So that company eventually went away. Then I tried my hand in corporate America for the next 4 years, doing a lot of e-business types of stuff for a company that did a lot of catalog internet. Fortune 500 stuff is great, but I don't know. I'm much more of an entrepreneur. I like to have wild and crazy ideas, which are not always supported. So needless to say, eventually I went to a smaller firm where I became their CTO right outside New York City. And at this point in my career, I really did not want to be a technologist anymore because I felt like, and I'm sure you've experienced this in any way, if you've ever done any technology to anybody out there, you're always like the glorified tech support person. Everybody asks you what laptop they should buy. Can you fix this? Can I fix that? And nothing wrong with helping people, but it's just like you never get anywhere, right? I mean, I was already the CTO for a place, and I just felt like there was nowhere to go already in my not that long career. Yeah. And all the systems are always breaking, I mean, like we're recording this on Skype and you and I are just excited that it's even working, right? Because in our lives, we just know that technology doesn't always come through and internet can jump out and all sorts of communications can go wrong. So I think
the internet, sorry to interject, I think the internet and all the platforms that operate on it is in constant beta for me. There's always something not quite right, not quite working, and when they upgrade stuff, they always forget that, in the coding somewhere, somebody forgot to write a note in the coding saying, remember to change this before you upgrade. It's like
exactly.
So yeah, I completely concur with that. It's tough sometimes when the stuff doesn't work. Definitely.
Oh, it's so true. I like to tell people that the internet's basically held together by crazy glue and Scotch tape, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's so unpredictable.
That's right.
Yeah, so it just kind of got to me after a while that stuff breaks down, everybody's in a bad mood, and a lot of technologists don't like to get on podcasts and talk, right? It's not the kind of public speaking circuit that you typically see. You can pretty much count on one hand how many technologists are really verbose and good with people. So I felt like there was this whole other skill set that I had that I couldn't really exercise on a regular basis. And I didn't really want to do like a whole side business. I really wanted to jump in. So eventually I went to the founders of the company and I said, hey, I want to start my own business. I don't want to leave you without support. So how about you become my client? And they did. So I never went in again. Continued to support them from afar. That didn't last forever. So now we're getting to the year 2005. So I was still living in the greater New York City area, just starting my fledgling business in my basement, nice and dreary. But when you're looking at nothing but concrete walls, I would say it inspires you. But of course, entrepreneurs are always like one click away from crazy, right? Yeah. So we're endlessly hopeful for apparently no reason. And people are like, what? You're excited about sitting in your stupid basement? That's dumb. I'm going to go to work now. So you can't make everybody happy, and other people aren't living your lives. You have to live your own. So I really wanted to go out on my own. I had a lot of good ideas, but in the early days, it was tough. And, I was doing some technology consulting, helping build websites, stuff like that. But I really felt that wasn't enough to really stand out in the world. So like I like to tell people, I do a little thought experiment where I say, okay, what kind of milk do you buy at the store? Typically people will say, well, I like to buy whole milk, so I look for the red cap. And I say, okay, and you check to make sure that the price isn't 5,000% higher, and you check the expiration date, hopefully, so you're not drinking a bunch of things that are expired. But aside from that, you don't care. You don't notice the brand. And that's called a commodity. So if you're one of these guys that's doing something that everybody else is doing, people are always shopping for a lower cost version because you're just a commodity. You're just another gallon of milk on the shelf. Yeah. So, or liter of milk on the shelf. Yeah. So there's, in my mind, no reason to do that if you have some more specialty skills that you can charge a lot more for and just do a lot more for people in the world. Yeah. So right around then, I'd say around 2006 or so, social media became a very hot thing throughout the world, depending where you are and depending on how it manifests. But the thing that was amazing was nobody really knew how to do it. There were no rules. It was just crazy, right? We would contact companies or be introduced to companies. We would get laughed out of their business, out of their organization, and then they would call back 2 years later. I used to have people say, "Oh, why would anybody want to have a Facebook page? That's stupid. No, get out of here." Yes. Twitter didn't work. I can't sell anything. So back then, you would buy billboards and yellow pages ads and all of these things that were advertisements that would yell at you to buy something. Sure. As opposed to having it be your idea. I think the whole social media revolution inverted that pyramid where now everybody has a voice, everybody has to be listened to, and people are free to make their own decisions with lots and lots more data from their friends, from the internet, and otherwise. So we jumped in very early on and became a social media agency. We were the first place to do some work for John Deere, some of Jay-Z's brands, the popular artists. So it was really interesting in the 2000s, some of the work that we did. But I don't know about you, but I find that it's kind of crazy when you get requests of all sorts. And as I'm very fond of telling new entrepreneurs, you can't be everything to everyone. So you may have to take some side jobs and you may do some things a little bit out of the center of what you do for money early on before you can be a little bit more selective or charge more or whatever the case to keep your business running. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I did, some really kind of interesting side jobs early on when we were getting started. I actually, because I used to long ago did tech support and things like that, we moved across the country and we were just starting off. And, I would do like the thing where you would do like tech support house calls for a company just on the side to just make some money while I was learning a new part of the country and just growing the business. I have some friends that, drive things like Uber and Lyft, and there's no shame in that. Nobody's like coming along and saying, like you're in school and you're going to get an F for your paper because you're driving for Lyft. No, you're putting money in the bank. So people have the wrong idea. And I think it's actually good for a lot of people because you don't become an entrepreneur to just stroke your ego, right? I think if anything, you need to get your ego knocked out of you through poverty.
I've seen some people, Brian, that do get into ego in terms of running their business. So there are some people out there that do, but you're right. If you're truly passionate about your subject matter and your product and what you really want to get out there, I think that people are authentic and, in tune with it for sure. And the great thing, what you're sharing there, and this is great stuff for people to listen to and learn from, is that to get to that dream and your passion and to fulfill that and bring that passion to the world, which I know people say, oh, it's corny to be talking about your passion, but let's just, put that to one side. But it's you'll do anything to get it out there. So, and that's the message you're giving, do some other stuff whilst you're still working on developing your dream product or dream service that you want to get out there. So yeah, brilliant.
Absolutely. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I have a good professional ego because I think if you're not proud of what you're doing, if you act like the things that you're doing don't matter, people won't value them.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not shy saying we're one of the best places in the world at this because we are. I mean, I can show you all sorts of data, all sorts of success, all sorts of case studies and people chiming in and saying that we're good. Don't be a liar, right? I mean, stand on what you believe in and stand on the success that you've done. But I just think that, a lot of times if I have an opportunity to get one of my clients in the media and then they say, well, what else should be in the story? If people want to mention us and link to us, that's great. But, I'm here to serve my clients.
Yes.
That's really what I mean by that.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah. So.
Okay. So, so you then started putting your own business together, doing some side jobs as well. But in the social media consultancy, was that your start then in doing your own business? That was pretty much what you were doing?
So that was the first time we pivoted. So the first beginning of the business of NowSourcing circa 2005, that was really just me in my basement doing technology consulting and websites and things like that.
Gotcha.
So over the next few years, it evolved to becoming a social media agency, took on employees, had an office, and also moved across the country.
Yeah.
I just found that after a while, though, so like we said before, you really can't be everything to everyone. It got to the point in social where there were so many different specialties popping up that we were getting all these crazy requests every day. So people would say, hey, can you build landing pages? Do you do reputation management? Can you build our Twitter following? Can you do some custom consulting? How about a social media policy? And then nowadays, I mean, you have people, all they do is just manage Instagram accounts for famous cats, and they have book deals and movie deals. It's insane, right?
Yeah.
So you just can't be everything to everyone. So we reached, I would say, a crossroads in our business in the late 2000s where we had to really pick what we wanted to do. Were we going to be the kind of place that we were going to try to do everything and then really not achieve mastery at anything? That didn't really sit well with me, given that we were very good at building high quality work within social that would get a lot of traffic and attention. So I wanted to kind of stick with that narrative and figure out what we were going to do next, because I really wanted us to just look at the totality of all our skills and strengths and figure out what we could do.
Sure.
So along come the world of infographics. So back in 2008, you probably didn't see too many. You weren't thinking about that. So so that was pretty unknown at the time. There were pretty much, I would say, a handful of people in the world that were doing them. And what I noticed when I was watching for the first month or two of them doing it, they weren't really that good, right? So the design style was pretty immature. There were a lot of typos, grammatical errors. You would go to the bottom of the piece to look for the sources. There was no story, very few data points. And it would just say, sources, Wikipedia. And it's like, okay, you're going to give us like a specific page. And why is that even a good source?
Yes.
I mean, I guess we could debate Wikipedia, but to just say just Wikipedia is terrible, right? So that's no good. So looking at all that, I said, wait a minute. Are you telling me that there's only a handful of people in the world that are doing this? Most people respond very well to visuals compared to just buckets of text all over the internet.
Yes.
And only these people that are doing it poorly. Let's just stop everything we're doing in all of these other circles and just do this. So from then on, we didn't go after any other social business. Eventually just, gave it to other people or put people on their way. And from then on, we just started doing infographics.
Wow.
And like I said,
I'd like to dive in a little bit deeper on that, because that's a big decision. Because if only a handful of people in the world were doing it, how did you even know that they were successful? But I mean, social media was starting to become successful. So to kind of drop that and go, no, I'm going to go after this kind of unicorn over here. That's pretty brave, Brian.
It is. Or depending on who you are, it's either brave or stupid, right?
I wasn't going to say that.
No, it's okay. Well, we're entrepreneurs, so you would say brave. A lot of people thought I was stupid. A lot of people thought I was crazy because I could have just gone to work for some big company. Why am I even doing this anymore? So it just didn't seem right to me. I like running my own company. I like all those kinds of things. And like I said, I have a big family and a lot of personal commitments that I feel like I would just have a hard, annoying time just working for other people as opposed to setting my own schedule, lifestyle, the way that I see fit to help support my family and others that I try to do good work for. So I would say it wasn't as stupid and huge a jump as that. And here's why. So a lot of our specialty in social, because as I said, social was getting to be all over the place, a lot of our specialty there was building content that would, for lack of better words, go viral. Ugh. Sorry, yes. But those are the words that we have to define it.
Yes.
So we would build all this content. Do you remember back in the day in the late 2000s where you would have sites like dig.com and StumbleUpon and all of that?
Yes. Okay.
Do you remember how you had 100 people that basically were responsible for 50% of the front page of Dig?
No, I didn't know.
Yeah. So there was this very small group of people that controlled pretty much everything you saw on a daily basis. So I was one of those people. So I have a good eye for curation and what makes people tick. And I say part of that comes from doing some neuroscience and social psychology. Part of that is all the technology side of it. And then a lot of it is just practice. I mean, we turned 12 this August, and I've been doing stuff in the web one way or another for 20 years. So after a while, you just get a sense of what makes people tick, what makes people excited online, what makes them share. And it's not, what I do isn't magic, right? And certainly it's fallible. I can be wrong all the time, but I'd say that I'm right more than I'm wrong.
Great.
So that being said, we transferred a lot of our skills, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't really that different. It was more of just repackaging and being more not full service, but end to end on what we were doing.
Yes.
So we were already good at storytelling. We were already good at gathering data. We were already good at the graphic design sort of things. And we were already good at getting virality, crashing servers, getting in the press and all of that. So we just stripped away other things that didn't have to do with the core. And then we repackaged it in this new world called infographics. And if anything, I'd say that we leaped over a lot of people even today because we have a lot of interests and a lot of connections in the press and social where instead of just – because a lot of people can build you an infographic or especially if you write them a script and you're just designing it, but not that many people can repeatedly – get you a lot of really big press and attention, even if you're not, a huge company that everybody knows.
Yes.
So that's why I would say, looking back, and it's easier to look back, it wasn't such a leap.
No, so what you're saying is you already had the skills and you just transferred it to a more upgraded medium that would actually, leverage some of the skills you had already developed. And, well, I personally believe when I first saw infographics appear on the web, I was so excited. In fact, in the end, I used to save them all to my computer. Whenever I saw one, I would save it.
Nice. And that's awesome.
I mean, some of the first ones I saw were about drugs, and not medication, about, real drugs, hard drugs and stuff, and the side effects. And there was some weird stuff coming out, but even there were just circles and things, and they were just really basic data. So, but then eventually when Pinterest appeared, I went, oh, great. I can now, wherever I find them, I can just save them to my Pinterest board. So, and I went, that's the only reason I'm going to have Pinterest, is to have infographics. And I have to say that I've probably slowed down a little bit in that area, but I still have a lot of fond infographics that I like on my Pinterest boards, So, yeah. So, wow. You can tell I'm excited about the fact that you did that, because you definitely contributed to the rise of the whole infographic movement at the time.
Oh, absolutely. I would say, and again, this isn't ego, but this is more matter-of-factly, we definitely contributed to legitimizing it as an industry. So it's almost like we took a skill set and we jumped into an upgraded form of media, like you said. But it's another way to say it is, we took all our skill set and jumped into an industry that didn't exist.
Yeah.
Which is that's a little risky, sure.
Yeah.
But what's the downside, right? Because we could have just gone right back into social. It's just, it was getting more competitive, and we could have picked something else, right? So right now we could have been, ebook people, which we do a little bit, or I don't know. There's a lot of ways that we could have pivoted.
Yeah.
I just thought this was a smart thing to do, and so far it's paid off.
Brilliant. Love it. And on that journey then of the pivoting into that direction, what did people get it, or did you have some challenges convincing them? And generally, what were the challenges in, growing your business? I mean, you were employing people already, you said at the time.
Sure. So a lot of people didn't get it. A lot of the staff was confused. A lot of the world was confused. And, the thing that's interesting, Michael, is a lot of people still don't know what an infographic is. I can talk to random people that I meet or friends, and they say, well, what do you do? And I say, I make infographics. People are like, what is that? I've never heard of that word. Yeah.
Wow.
And, you and I feel like, how can that even be true, right?
I know. That's mad.
But how long's an infographic existed? 9 years, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how long's a blog been around? How long's email been around? So in the greater scheme of all things internet and marketing, it's still a very new medium. Almost hard to believe from where we're sitting. It is hard to believe,
yeah. Really,
there are many people in the world that have not seen an infographic. There are many organizations that have not yet produced an infographic. And even if they have, maybe they produced one or two, or they've done it in-house. Most people have not seen how far this kind of stuff flies.
Yeah.
I think is what we really say.
Yeah. Yeah, true. That's incredible. Incredible. And okay, so how did you overcome some of those challenges, that people didn't get it?
Sure. So in the early days, it wasn't easy at all. So the earliest work that we did was actually infographics for people, so organizations directly or agencies that we were already working with. And we said, hey, how would you like to try this new thing? You've probably never even heard of it, but it would do really well for you. And it didn't take too much persuading because, they worked with us and they were happy with us, right?
Yes.
So it was a pretty easy sell because it's very difficult to get somebody to buy something that they don't understand and that you don't know them. That would be crazy. Like I wouldn't go, door to door knocking on doors. Hello, ma'am or sir. How would you like to buy an info? That would be ridiculous.
Yes.
So we already went with existing clients.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of good basis of what we did. And then, through other networking and No, we didn't do like cold calling or anything like that. A lot of it came organically, word of mouth. But I'd say a lot of really what helped us rocket into the stratosphere, if you think about it, our clients are our marketing platform because we are literally getting people into the press every day of the week.
Yeah.
When somebody sees something great that looks really cool and tells a good story and it's in the press, well, they come calling. So I'll give you an example. There's a piece we did, I don't know, about 6 years ago or so that talked about the psychology of color. It was for a local painting company, not a famous place. And, paint is not that exciting.
No.
And by then, we already had a good amount of success, for sure. This is just one of several stories that I like to tell.
Of course.
So this one, I think, was so interesting because it was a small company. It was on what most people would consider very boring subject. And they said, we don't know what we should do, but help us make something great. And we said, okay. I mean, there is the phrase like watching paint dry. So this is certainly a challenge, but hey, challenge accepted. So we ended up doing a piece talking about the psychology of color, why people choose different colors for different rooms in their house or their office or whatever the case.
Yeah.
And it did phenomenally well. The week that it came out, it was in all sorts of publications, all over social media. To this day, it's still like one of the best performing things on StumbleUpon. People share it still every day of the week. It's still getting blogged about. People are still picking it up in social and other places online. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reason that things like that should continue on. But the thing that's interesting, you're saying like, well, where do you get clients from? So Google and Adobe both reached out to us the first week that this was lighting fire to the internet and said, this is amazing, come work for us. Wow. So when you're getting things like that to happen, a lot of things that we do are just inbound word of mouth, and it just continues to snowball because things continue to go out there. So if you think about new pieces that are going live and in the press, plus all this other stuff that's just out there, people still reach out to us from things that are half a decade old, but they don't necessarily know or care how old it is. They just know that they like it and they want things like that for them. Yeah.
There is a timeliness. I mean, apart from if you see infographics on social, so what's happening in terms of the size of Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and all of those channels, those get out of date within, a few months because things are still evolving and growing. But you're right. There are some generic, informational data that's solid data that doesn't get out of date, that explains and shares a story to people. And that's the bit that people love. And you're right. It's ageless. It can go on for years and you'll still find new audiences who get excited about it. So yeah, fabulous, man. And
yeah, thank you.
And so, okay. So, I mean, I think you're sharing, I was going to ask you what are some of the highlights been, but I think you're sharing those right now, right? Those are some of the highlights in terms of doing what you're doing in your business. And what about the kind of people side, because you've got a reasonable team with you now, and what have been some of the challenges and highlights of having people? Because people that are listening to this podcast, they may be starting out, or they may be in a growth phase where they need to start recruiting people in their organization. And there's inevitably, you hear so many awful stories about employees. How's that gone for you?
It's one of the hardest things you'll ever do, right? Because just hiring friends or family or just hiring out of convenience because you're growing are some of the stupidest reasons you can ever hire anybody. Not to say that those can't be successful, but you need to be careful how you hire, when you hire. I would say you should only hire when necessary. I think you need to be very cognizant that if a person is a total jerk, it doesn't matter how talented they are. They could still be very toxic to your workplace.
Yeah.
I think that some people might just never get what you do.
Yes.
Some people are very good at interviewing, but then they suck in person.
Yeah.
I think once we had an intern come, who came for a day and never came back, and nobody ever heard from her again. I hope she's okay. I mean, I don't know. I've seen some of the weirdest stories. So I think you really need to You need to screen well. You need to interview well. I have a whole bunch of little tricks that I try to do in interviews to just try to get a sense of the person, get a sense of how quickly they can think about things on the fly, not just, memorize crap and try to present things. But it's so super tough, right? And then are you doing the things that will keep everybody happy? It's so hard. And, I have a lot of discussions like this with other entrepreneurs. So we talk about, how do you go from one office to two offices? What about, virtual work, all future of work? It's a fascinating subject that we would probably need another hour or two to just cover.
Yeah, totally agree.
Anywhere near, but it's so important to, really have people that believe in what you do. And it's not just like another hop. I mean, you're always going to have people that, may want to just work somewhere for a little while and move on. And we certainly have that too. Yeah. And it's difficult, right? Because like I said, this is a new industry. So I can't necessarily go after people who've been doing this for years and years. No. So sometimes it's better to have people that are just starting out in this field. It's a tough one, man.
And the thing is, I think it's tough for everybody because at the end of the day, everybody wants to be happy, and people think that happiness is having a home, having lots of money and holidays. That's being happy. And they don't see working for somebody as true happiness unless they are totally engaged, with the business, with the mission, with the values, with the owner, with the founder. They are, and of course, most people come to work because they want to earn money because they've got to pay the rent or they've got to pay a mortgage. They want to have money for, leisure time. And so there's always these conflicting things. Whereas we're working for ourselves, we understand it's our own business. So we're highly motivated for that. And yeah, I feel for you because luckily I don't employ any employees, and I probably won't. I'll probably use freelancers if I need to scale. But yeah, very interesting. And thank you for sharing that honesty with us as well. So, okay.
Sure. And let me just, if I may interject, yeah. I want to add onto something that you said here. So you as a founder, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you're taking on all the risk, however much you pay yourself, however much you pay for others, all of your success, all of your flaws, you have to own up to that. So I like to say, people are like, wow, look at your client list. You work with all these huge companies. I say, yeah, but I'm also the janitor, right? It doesn't matter. That's part of that ego thing.
Yeah.
But the thing that I think people should take away, if you hear one thing today, it's this. You can't just expect all of the people that are going to work for you, unless you're giving them equity or something like that, to have the same mission and drive that you are as the entrepreneur, because they're not taking the risk that you are, right? They're taking a much lower risk because they're getting a paycheck. That doesn't mean that they don't believe in you and they don't believe in the mission, but you can't expect, in the early days, if you take no money for a year, you can't say, well, I'm doing this, so you have to live with whatever. No, they don't. They're just taking a job.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's an interesting TED Talk that's like this too, that I'm sure we could share in the show notes, talking about the first follower. So there's some musical concert or something like that, where there's a bunch of people having a great time, a bunch of young people, and they're just, having a picnics on blankets and stuff like that, all over this huge, meadow on top of a mountain or whatever. And then all of a sudden, this one guy starts getting up and starts dancing like a maniac. So he, like the TED Talk person says, is the leader. When you are just dancing by yourself, you're just a crazy person dancing by yourself. You're not really doing anything yet. So eventually in the video, along comes the second person. And that person starts dancing along with the leader. He's the first follower. He likes to say that that's the real leader, right? Because the first guy's just crazy and dancing by himself. The other guy gives it some legitimacy, and then you see a couple people join, and then by the end of the video, basically everybody is going into this whole pit, just dancing like crazy. So, your key people, your core people will certainly be a lot invested in all that, and ultimately and ideally, of course, everyone will be invested, but don't expect just because you're the entrepreneur that everybody else has to be doing that, because they're not starting their own companies. That's your company.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very interesting indeed. Yeah. Yeah, totally true. And what's that TED Talk called?
I'll have to find it.
Okay, so send it to me, and I'll make sure to add it to the blog post on my podcast. Okay,
absolutely,
fantastic. So, what's the vision then, Brian? Where are you going from here? What's going to be happening to NowSourcing in the next 3 to 5 years?
That's a great question. I like to think of our company, rather than just being an infographic company, it's what do we do the next 3 to 5 years company.
Yes.
So I would say we usually bet pretty well early on in different industries. So we bet early on that social would be a thing. It worked. We bet early on that infographics would be a thing, and it worked. Now, that pivot was a long time ago. By internet years, forever ago. So I'm always thinking about what's next. But is the company too big now to really just do what's next and pivot it? And it wouldn't make sense to just have that part fall over and die, because, I mean, we're a household name in this industry now, and it does really well for everybody. So I don't want to go away from it.
No.
But I think eventually the web and how we interface and interact with computers and socially is all going to become a lot different from what we do today. And I'll also link to some news on this too. So I personally am fascinated with virtual reality, but more so augmented reality, where it's overlaid in the world around you.
That's ridiculous. Yeah, I agree.
For sure. So I think that at some point there will be an intersection of content like what we do into those things. Right now, they're too bulky, they're too costly, there's a bunch of wires, but it's getting there. There's a great video on Bloomberg that just came out talking about Meta, which is an augmented reality place. Meta made a promise to the world as part of just like a press thing, where they said, in a year's time, we're not going to use monitors anymore. We're just going to use these headsets and have holographic monitors flying around in our offices. So this video actually shows some stuff about that. So I'm super excited where all that stuff is going. I think the market's not quite ready yet, because there's still optics, there's still hardware, and just incredible processing power.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, part of the reason why the first .com movement died was the internet sucked, right? Like, you couldn't do a lot.
Yeah.
So in 1999 or 2000, at least in the United States, only 7%, less than 10% of the United States was on broadband internet.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about broadband, we're talking about maybe 1.5 megabits per second.
I know.
Which is less than even streaming Netflix without buffering all over the place. So there wasn't enough power to push anything good through the pipe.
Yeah.
So augmented reality, virtual reality, you need incredible processing power to have 3D realistic images in full brightness during the day to be in front of you in the world around you. That's asking for a lot.
Well,
so
I'll tell you what. I don't know. Did you see the clip they played in the Apple Worldwide Developers Conference some weeks ago, where they showed a piece of augmented reality, a game that they were projecting with an iPad onto a table. Well, they were looking at the iPad, and they had this table on the stage, and there were all sorts of things flying to the table. I mean, it was surreal. And there were people jumping off the table, right? It knew the space that was around it, and they projected this scene, and there were bombs going off and explosions, and it was totally ridiculous. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to find the clip. I'm going to put it on YouTube. I'm going to include it in the show notes, because I totally am with you on this. The augmented reality, I think, is going to be bigger, I believe, than virtual reality.
Yeah, I would totally agree. We actually, come to think of it, we did an infographic. There is a company that specializes on the optics side, so building the actual stuff that makes the field of vision. It's a company called Loomis. So we actually just did an infographic for Loomis talking about the collective sizes of virtual and augmented reality. I find that a lot of people, even tech journalists, and analysts, they generally will lump the two industries together and talk about the size, but they're very different. They can solve very different problems. I personally would argue you can actually fit virtual reality inside of augmented reality, right? So it's almost a roadmap. So if you think about, and I won't get too technical here, but if you are building something for virtual reality in the coding software to do it, to make something augmented, you're basically just pulling the box up and away from the field of view, and you're just being perspectiveless, so it can just exist in real life, as opposed to being in the VR box, if you will.
Yes.
So yeah, very excited about all this stuff.
Oh, amazing. We could talk for hours about this.
Indeed.
And I will be very interested to follow the progress on that and your progress with that too. So well done. So I've got a couple of questions left, and before we wrap up, and if you were speaking to the listeners that are listening to this podcast, that could be aspiring business owners or business owners who are, looking to pivot their business or looking to grow and scale, what advice would you have for them that you've learned over the years that you've been in business, Brian?
Well, pivoting is very difficult. So make sure you're not shooting yourself in the foot. So if you have something that's doing really well, it doesn't always make sense, right? So we didn't just overnight just only do infographics. It eventually eclipsed the regular social work that we did in revenue. So just because you have a good idea, that doesn't mean that there's automatically a market that's mature enough to buy it for the amount of money that you want. Also, infographics have gone up in price. Yeah. If we were still at the levels when we first started, I don't think it would be that great a business because we have much more overhead than we did back then. Yeah. So I think one of the most important things is if you already have something that's doing really well, don't just kill it just because you have this dream. I think that goes without saying, but sure. If we don't say it, people might not think about it.
Absolutely. Great
Sometimes
advice.
we get sometimes we just get too excited about the next new thing that we just completely get blinded by its potential success as opposed to the current real success that we have with other things.
Great advice. Thank you.
Sure.
Brian, super interesting. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And then the very, very last question is, how can people get in touch with you? How can they find you, get in touch with you, learn about your business? Could you share some links? And I'll include them in the show notes anyway, but if you could just share them, that would be great.
Absolutely, Michael. And thank you again so much for having me on today. So you can find us at nowsourcing.com, and we're basically everywhere on social at NowSourcing.
Great. Okay, that is fantastic. Brian, and thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Hopefully we will meet in person one day, but I've enjoyed listening to you. I've learned a great deal more about you, and hopefully we'll meet in person as well. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll catch you again very soon. Take care.
Thanks so much. Take care now.
Staying Alive UK. Share your story.